Good morning. I am Dori Tunstall, your host for the RBC Black Diamond Ball Workshop Connects, Black Designers Connect. As your host, I would like to introduce myself. I am a multi-generational African-American heritage. I'm the Dean of Design at OCAD University and the first Black and Black female Dean of a Faculty Design anywhere. I'm here in lockdown in Takaranto, also known by its colonial name, Toronto, on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat. And just a little bit about me. I've started in my background as a classically trained anthropologist, but got into design in the late 90s. And since then, I've been focused on bringing a critical perspective to design, especially as it relates to decolonization, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as part of the topic today, making sure that as designers and artists that we get paid what we're worth. So I have brought today two amazing guests from coast to coast. So why don't you, and I always like for people to introduce themselves. So why don't you introduce yourself, Duane?
Hey, all. My name is Duane Jones. I was born and raised in the tiny island of Bermuda, and I am better known as the creative director and founder of lifestyle brand Art Pays Me. I also do records and information management for Dalhousie Faculty of Medicine, and I'm currently based in Chibuktuk, otherwise known as Halifax.
All right. And tell me a little bit how you got your career started.
So, when I first started, I've been an artist my whole life as a kid, but I actually wanted to be an accountant. And my grades didn't really live up to it. So my school took my high school wouldn't let me continue with the accounting program. And all I really had left was art. So I put my energy into that. And my high school art teacher said that I seem like I have a good eye for graphic design, which I had no idea what that was. And pursued it at Bermuda College. And then from Bermuda College, they led me to Nova Scotia College of Art and Design and to Halifax. And here I am.
Good morning and welcome. Tafui, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tafui. I'm originally from Kingston, Jamaica. I'm an independent artist and designer, and I'm currently based on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, also known as Vancouver.
And how did you get started in your careers? And you notice I said plural.
Yeah. Since I was about 5 years old, as I've always said, it's my teacher introduced me to art when I wouldn't stop crying. So it was a method that she used with me to paint every day as soon as I came to class, as a way of pacifying me. And I fell in love with art since then. And it's been tunnel vision to doing art since I was about 5. And that led me to study in Montreal right after high school. I would come to Canada on vacation to see family, fell in love with Montreal, went to CEGEP, and I did studio arts in CEGEP at Dawson. And then I moved on to Concordia University, where I majored in design. And I think the program of studying design in the way I did, that fused so many different mediums. So it's industrial design, there's graphic design, there's multimedia. And then I just somewhat added all the other areas of design that I loved to in my elective classes, like textile design. Mm-hmm. And, when I finished school, I thought I was just going to do product design, mainly digital products, like web-based work, or physical product design. I had moved right back to Jamaica as soon as I was done school. And, those options were a bit limited at that time. So I went into advertising. So I worked as an art director in a few ad agencies. And then I moved on to lecture in design at the University of the West Indies. At the same time, when I was doing all my graphic design work, I was also painting. So I would do my 9 to 5 and then do the 5 to 9 or 5 to 12. And that was mainly painting. So I would exhibit And during the time when I was exhibiting, activism came in my work. So as a painter, and it was also a way to separate me from my, my regular day job that was very much based on promoting someone else's brand. And I used the opportunity to speak about things that I found weren't fair or that wasn't just. And at the time, I spoke about LGBTQ issues in Jamaica and with equal rights. And, I also talked about police brutality in Jamaica because that's also an issue for the same reason with colonialism. It doesn't matter what country it's in, it works the same way. So then after I finished, after a few years, I actually moved back to Canada. And I also worked as an educator a professor at the local college there in design. And at the same time, I always painted and taught. And then I just went full time into consulting.
Okay.
Here we are today. That was a lot.
No, that's what we're here for. We're here to get to know you. So I always like to start with joy. So what is experience in the last week that has brought you joy? So for me, connecting with all of you this week has completely brought me joy. I've admired you and followed you on social media. And so to be able to connect with you in these last sort of week or so has just been really quite joyful and beautiful.
You got it.
Me? Same here. It was the night when everything announced. I think we started talking, and it's just really great to meet other creatives across the country because it's not often that you find each other, and also planning the fundraiser that we're doing with OCAD. It's been such a pleasure just working on a vision that I had last year, and it's now coming to light. We'll talk more about that later.
I have to concur. Like this has been amazing, just connecting with y'all. But then I also had just a simple one at the end of the week where I had been hemming and hawing over a particular t-shirt design and finally just put it out, and I was so happy with the way it turned out. And it's just, I was just excited.
Those are the big joys, right? Having your design turn out right, that is major joy. Yeah. So again, what we're really kind of focused on is like how we manage, right, to sustain ourselves through our creative activities, as well as what's really important for many of us Black folks, right, is also giving back to our community. So how have you managed to sustain yourself through your creativity, as well as give back to community? And we'll start with you, Tafui, and then we'll go to Duane.
I just find it's always, within the past few months or so, it's been, I've been particularly mindful of self-care. We're stuck at home. It's easy to stay inside all day and not get a breath of fresh air, especially if you're not in Vancouver. Like, I can't even say that now because we got snow this morning. But for the entire time, we've been lucky here, and I've been able to go out at least make sure that I go outside for at least 4 days a week, and mindful meditation in the mornings when I can't go outside. And then by giving back to the community, I've it's something that I've pretty much tried to do throughout my career, whether it's having a blog that I had a few years ago for about 5 or 6 years. It was an art and design based blog. So it would be promoting Canadian artists and designers. And then now with the new project that we're working on with OCAD and Vancouver Art Gallery for the raising funds.
So how have you been able to financially sustain yourself through your creative work? Because you went through a little bit of your career. Kind of where are you in terms of managing all the different things that you need to do to sort of financially sustain?
So for me, isn't that funny how I thought about sustaining us?
No, it's not funny. It's true. That's where we're at.
Yeah, like now it's like just basic stuff, what can I have for breakfast? I juggle both. So now I have I have an online store that I've been running for about 5 years now. And so I sell art prints. So because I know that there are real issues. When I was in school, I was never able to afford like an original piece of art. So I wanted to make my art more accessible. So I started making prints of my work. And then I've used that artwork and I put it on with textiles, and I've made products with those. So it's about giving people access at whatever level that they're at is what I've been really trying to do. So that kind of just, my website kind of was just somewhat of, me just testing it out to see how I could help my clients be better at e-commerce. Mm-hmm. So it was like a research project, and I figured I can't give someone advice about their website and how they could run their e-commerce better if I don't have one myself. I started doing that, and that became, like a whole passive income all on its own. And my work is now sold in gift shops like Vancouver Art Gallery and the Ottawa Art Gallery and some retail stores. And then lots of people buy directly from me, just, through word of mouth, social media, and the art shows that I also have. And then, like I said, too, I have a design practice where I have now specialized in helping retail stores have a better brand voice online. So I've helped a few businesses refresh their aesthetic, like their logo, their voice. I do styling for their products too, for their websites. So it's these different models, like the art model, and then there's the design model that I just work simultaneously that way.
And can you break down, because you used the term passive income, and so some people may not know what that is. Like, it's one of those things everyone says, if you want to have wealth, you need to have the majority of your income being passive income. Something I haven't learned personally, but I'm working on it. Can you break that down a little bit for everyone?
So there's your active income, and there's a passive income, or you can just say your side hustle. Some people call it their bear money. I don't particularly drink beers, so I use it on other things. So that would be like if you make $2,000 a month, the passive income would be your $500 in addition to your 9-to-5 job, just something to kind of tide you over until the next paycheck comes. It's usually a passion project for lots of people because it's not generating a huge amount of income at the beginning. And for me, it's really grown between when I started and now. And like they say, it takes 5 years for every business to really become profitable, and it's true.
Well, one of the things I always like about passive income is we talk about, like, with active income, you have to show up to get the paycheck, right? So if you're consulting, you have to show up to get the paycheck. If you're making art, right? Like, you have to show up and make it, right? And what's great about passive income is, like, you could literally be sitting in your chair and money will be flowing in. And so there's a way in which that, again, being able to have like a backup, right? Like that backup income coming in that you don't have to put more hours towards beyond kind of the hours that you said, is like one of those things that I try to encourage more and more of my students to think about, especially in art and design, where it's like, okay, put your pattern on Redbubble or whatever, and then you'll be able to sort of get some other income out of it in another way.
Yeah. So, I also think it's a good idea for us to not think of ourselves as the medium that we use. So like if you're a painter or if you're a graphic designer, don't just think of that medium. So for example, I was listening to a lot of musicians talking about how they make their money. And if you think about it, musicians make one song, and that song can make them so much money. And how can we do that as a visual artist? And for me, that's through making prints, and you can I license my patterns and my artwork for other people to use. And that's how you can make that. That's physically how we can make that passive income.
But I always think of like athletes, right? Where again, they may get their salary from, like the NBA, but they're making more money on endorsements and all these other sort of incomes, which again, you go in for an hour and then you're getting paid and paid and paid and paid and paid based on that. So it's a good way to think about like what other models that we can use from other businesses, other industry. Yeah. So Duane, tell me, how do you manage to sustain yourself through your creativity as well as give back to community?
So yeah, I co-sign everything that both of you just said. I agree. Partially for me is I do the same thing. I look at different revenue streams. So a lot of people would consider my day job in information management not necessarily creative, but it's actually a type of design. So, and me coming from a graphic design background, when I went into that industry, I was able to make those strong connections. So that right there is my my steady income. And then I also like to have places outside where I have ownership. So that would be Art Pays Me, where, like I said, like I just make something and it turns out, it doesn't turn out, it's on me. And I don't really care if it sells, it does, it doesn't. But over time, it has gone from a passive thing to me more of an active thing. And so I'd say my income is split between those worlds. Mm-hmm. And also I don't really advertise this so much, but I do graphic design consultations still. So the interesting thing about when you start really putting your vision out and letting people know exactly how you look, your aesthetic is, people start coming to you for that kind of work, and you don't necessarily have to promote. So that would probably be my second biggest revenue stream, just doing branding, logo work, or whatever the case may be for people.
Cool. So why don't you tell me, like, how and why did you start Art Pays Me?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Actually, and the giving back part, I forgot. I volunteer a lot of boards and committees as well. Okay. And so Art Pays Me kind of came together from, we're all kind of told at a young stage in life, well, not all of us, but a lot of us, that artists aren't necessarily supposed to make money, or they can't make money. And there's always someone who's like, you like doing this, it's okay for you to do it for me for free, sort of thing. And when I went to school, I first graduated, when you're in school, like, this design stuff is the most important thing in the world. And then you hit the real world and you realize it's often one of the lower valued things in a business. And it was a hard pill to swallow for me, and I didn't really necessarily know how to deal with it. And I did have situations where clients would say, hey, do this for free and you'll be my guy. I'll come to you every single time. And then they come back to you with more free work or more really low work. And you're just like, this ain't what I went to school for. But so, after like years of doing this, I worked as in-house designer at Dalhousie in the medical school. And, I just got frustrated with just feeling like the creative industry, it just felt like it wasn't a sustainable place to be. So I took advantage of my time at Dal and started studying information management and got a master's degree with that. But the irony of doing that was that I started to realize that the people in my cohort came to me from my unique perspective. And the reason I had a unique perspective was because of my creative background. So, you know, while all this was happening, I was actually trying to eliminate clients from my practice, and I started a clothing brand called Be Glitterati. So I was kind of growing this independent creative thing while also going into a completely different direction. And yeah, but just hearing the way people talked about what I was doing, I started applying like that same thinking to the opposite. So the way I was bringing my art thinking to information management, I started bringing my information management and business thinking to my design clients and to my artwork. And I realized that part of my problem and frustration with clients was I had a hard time demonstrating value to them, and I had a hard time speaking their language. And once I was able to speak to them a little better, I was able to command the rates that I wanted. And I was also even having better creative results because I could convince them that this is why they should go this direction versus another direction. And, you know, all this is still going on. This Be Glitterati thing is happening. Be Glitterati ended up being the precursor to Art Pays Me. So I was feeling like it wasn't moving the way I wanted to move. And my friend Bo had a creative agency at the time. And he offered to like do some branding work for me. So he worked out a good deal for me. So we exchanged some services. And he basically said, look, you've got a t-shirt that says Art Pays Me on it. And everything you talk about in this brand goes along those same lines. And it seems like nobody could tell you what Be Glitterati was. It's always a big conversation. You having to explain what this word means and not. But Art Pays Me is something that people can grasp right away. It's like you're hashtagging it everywhere on Instagram. I think you should rebrand as Art Pays Me. Keep it simple. And if you don't do it, I'm gonna take the idea. And I was like, all right. And yeah, we've been rocking ever since. And you know, I started a podcast in the last year and a half now that's along the same lines, and I just interview creators and try to grow the brand that way as well.
I mean, one of the things that you talked about was barter. We don't actually talk a lot about the fact of like we can barter our services and exchange our services with other people, and I think about that a lot when I think about giving back. Like it's always, the thing I always tell my students is like, never do anything for free. You know, Emancipation Proclamation, Black folks are no longer allowed to do anything for free because we gave away our labor for free, or our labor was taken for free for a really long time. So if you're a Black folk, you should never do anything for free. But that doesn't mean that you can't barter, right? That doesn't mean that you can't exchange. And so just tell me a little bit about kind of some of the other bartering or exchanges that you've done, in some ways, again, as a means of giving back.
Yeah, that's important. And also, like, yeah, when I talk about Art Pays Me, yeah, money is important. That was kind of like the initial thing that got me frustrated. But pay is so, like, it could be in so many different ways. So, you know, when it comes to photography is expensive. Sometimes I pay a photographer. Sometimes they say, hey, I just want you to send me some clothes for the next little bit. Sometimes they want other things. So it's important that whatever way you can bring value to each other, you at least work out. And I think that's what it kind of ends up being. It's like a value exchange that you're really looking for. Yeah.
So then as we wait for Tafui to join us back, so you were beginning to talk about this a little bit, but can you tell me about like your earliest experience in which you did work and you felt you were not being paid what you were worth? And then by comparison, can you describe a more recent experience in which you felt you were paid what you were worth?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked about that. So like one of the major catalysts, and I still think about this a lot, in my first job, I was working for this magazine. I was art director, but we ended up meeting one of the great things about that was my boss really let me sit in a lot of meetings, and I got to meet a lot of people through that process. But what ended up happening was I met people at agencies and things like that. And one of these guys left the agency and wanted to start his own thing. And he was in marketing, and he would approach clients and come up with all these big plans and everything else, but he didn't have a designer to execute these ideas. So he would approach me for it, and he would always like have these big promises of, yeah, I'm going to pay you on the next one. I'm going to pay you on the next one. And it never happened. And so one of the things that stuck with me is what happens if artists or designers take the middle person out, and we talk, we can eliminate some of those. If we learn how to talk to clients, then we don't need someone to talk to clients on our behalf, etc. So that was one of the things. And I say most recently, and I'm a chronic, I talk about all this stuff, but I'm a hypocrite, and I talk about it because I need the lesson, and I'm a chronic undercharger. So an agency approached me last year, and they wanted my help on a logo for a brand that they were developing. And I actually charged what I felt was high but fair, and ultimately it ended up working out. The whole client process was painless, so there was no like stress over concepts and timelines and all this other stuff that I was so used to dealing with. And I actually got paid what I felt was fair for the effort. So it was a reminder to just don't be afraid to put your foot down and say, hey, look, this is what I'm worth. If you don't want to work with me, it's okay.
Yeah, one of the things I did about 2 years ago is I like when I give talks, I set up a sliding scale. And so it's like, if you're a for-profit company and I'll tell you what it is. Like if you're a for-profit company of like making over $1 million, it's $25,000, right? If you're one of my favorite institutions or like a grassroots organization, like the minimum is 500. But like I said, if I really like you, we could work out some exchange, right? But but it was one of those things that made it very clear and simple. Especially like right now where like blackness is the new flavor, so everyone wants like the black speaker. So I just send, like I have Marianne, my EA, send my sliding scale. So it's like, you just tell me where you fit in the organization, and that's your price. And it was really interesting in the sense of like, well, first of all, people paying the price, right? So there's large corporations were like, okay, we'll pay this, no problem. Others were like, were shocked. And there was a little bit of sticker shock. And then I explained, but when I broke it down, I sort of say, well, I'm probably at my career. Like I could probably ask for more, but I'm asking for this. And it's important for me to ask for this because other people, like if my rates are low where I'm at, then that means that I drop the rates for everyone else lower. So I'm going to keep pushing my rates higher so that I push the rates higher for everyone. Right.
Yeah.
And so after I kind of explained that, then some people were like, okay, we'll come back to you next year when we have more money, which is interesting because they are like, it wasn't like they were just like trying to brush me off. They're like, okay, we talked to so-and-so, we're partnering with this one to get more money to be able to bring you. But for me, it was an important step in demonstrating my worth in a way that made it uncontroversial. Because it's like, if you're making more than $1 million, you have no excuse to be saying, we're going to pay you $500 for this, right? And so it was super clear. So welcome back, Tafui. So the question is, tell me your earliest experience in which you did work and felt you were not paid your worth. And then in contrast, tell us about a recent experience in which you felt you were paid your worth.
Wow. When I finished school, I went back to Jamaica, and I had my dad, who was my consultant. He's always my consultant since I was like 5. I would go and tell him stories about what happened, and he would always advise me. And it wasn't any different once I was done school. The first job that I had, I wasn't sure. I was living with my parents at the time, and I didn't know, like, how much should I charge? This is how much they said they're going to pay me, so I accepted it. And then I worked there for a month, and then when I got my pay minus the, all the taxes and insurance and all of those things, I started to look for an apartment, and I started to do research on how much it would cost for me to get a car and the rent and the savings and all the things just to live. And I was like, I'm short by like a lot of money. So I went back to my boss and I said, I know I agreed for X amount of money, but since I've worked a month and now I'm realizing how much it's actually I'm going to get in my account, it's not enough. And then I brought a pen and a paper and I wrote down, this is how much the rent is. I did research and I said, this is how much it's going to cost for me to get a car. I don't want to live with my parents forever. So, I need this. And these are the other things that I need. And plus I need to save. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, Miss McLean, this is a good thing. You know what you did, and you are right. You do deserve more money. And he gave me the additional.
What?
Yeah.
I about to say that's like only in Jamaica.
That's a good dude.
I think, like if we look at the humanity in all of this, and by saying, this is what I need to live, and if the person you're negotiating with cannot see that, it means they're not seeing you, and it means you shouldn't be working with them, period, because that's just not going to be a healthy relationship. So, just start out by respecting yourself enough to do the work, present yourself in the best way you possibly can. So when you ask for what you should be paid, you will get it, they will get it, and if they don't, you'll get something else. That's my philosophy on that.
But it also though reminds me, I mean, to speak about like my sense only in Jamaica, right? Is that when we met the first time, you told the story of like a peach, right? Was it peach? A mango. Is it mango? Was it mango?
Yes.
And so I do think like that, like in the context of being here in Canada, the reality of the fact that especially as Black folks, that value and that worth is not seen, right? Like I would imagine that scenario playing out quite differently here in Toronto. Even if you presented all the math and all those sort of things, it's like, oh no, you signed a contract and you're done with that. And, you'll just have to find another side hustle or whatever to be able to do that. So can you talk a little bit? I think it's important to talk about like the context of that, right?
You're right. And that I need to give it context. And another reason why I have my own business is for that same reason. It's that when I moved back to Canada, when I was just looking for jobs in say advertising or design, it was always, I was just the anomaly in the room, it's like if I'm at a gallery and I have a show, it's me and my husband as mainly the Black people in the room. And, you're hyper marginalized at times. And people have said things like, oh, your work is so sophisticated for someone from Jamaica. I mean, how do you respond to something like that when you're in the middle of a job interview and, they say it's like a backhanded compliment. And that's the reason why I decided to even go into consultation and design and while I was teaching, because I, wanted to not have to deal trying to prove that I can do the work. So for me, that was me showing that I could do it through having a blog. So I built a community of people who knew what my aesthetic was and what they would, what to expect when they got, they worked with me. And it's, like they're already familiar when you walk into the space, and that's how I started to get clients, particularly with retail, is through the blog that I had. So then I would negotiate again. I brought that same girl in the room that graduated school. I bring her with me every time I'm negotiating things, and and sometimes, like you said, you go with based on what that the business can afford, and you work from there. But definitely I still have to renegotiate, whether it's an art show, and based on how much I think I should be paid for the job. And if it's if I'm doing something different than what other designers or other artists might be bringing to the table, then I'll point that out and say, well, I'm going to be doing this particular piece. This is how long it's going to take me. I'm going to need an assistant. I'm going to need XYZ. And therefore, this is how much I'm charging.
Mm-hmm.
It's communication. And like I said, it's going to be difficult to, at times, especially when you're younger, because you're a little bit insecure, to actually stand up and for yourself and how much you think you should be paid. But you can also do your own projects. If it's too stressful for you to be constantly negotiating for your payment, then start your own thing. Start something really small. Art Pays Me is a really good idea. He's basically putting his art on he's making wearable fashion. I do home fashion, and I make prints. So then the same people who would buy your prints and his t-shirt they're already sold, so they're more likely to come to you and say, can you do this for me too? I've had a client who bought a bunch of my paintings, and he came to me and asked me to design his entire house. I'm not an architect. So those things actually do happen. And so they're already a fan. So he just said, I really like the way your mind works, and I like the way you present your work, and I'd love to see that translated in my house. And we did that.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me about your current art exhibition? This is Tafui at the Vancouver Art Gallery, and the kind of partnership that you've set up with us, OCAD University, to fund scholarships for OCAD University Black students. We're so excited. We're so excited. So where did this innovative ideal come from, and what impact are you seeking through it?
So I unfortunately lost my dad in 2017, and I think it takes you years to just come to terms with losing someone who has had a huge impact in your life. And when he got sick, I was sitting by his bed and we would talk, and I promised him a lot of things. And another thing was just to make sure that he's proud, and to make sure that he's remembered. So this, and what happened last year, George Floyd, and it really kind of reinforced something in me to take action, and because his life had an impact and still has an impact on my life, and I've never met him, and just to think that his child is now growing up without their father. I could not imagine where I would be if I did not have my dad in my life. And then to know that, she has this imagery of her dad's last minutes. It's all there for us to see. And, I wanted to do something for my dad, and not just for my dad, but to I'm still working on speaking about him without getting,
No, it's let the feels flow. Let the feels flow.
No, like this is an ocean of so I really wanted to impact someone's life the way he impacted mine. And besides my life, the most precious gift he gave me was my education, and and like building my confidence by really letting me believe that there's nothing that I can't do. And it's because I feel that way, and he has empowered me to be that way, is why I wanted to help someone else. Because, when I went to school, there's a lot of my friends, especially in CEGEP, were just really surprised that I was doing art or design, because they just thought it was a complete waste of time, or my parents would never pay for that because you're not going to get paid. And so why don't you, become a social worker or go into medicine? And I thought, you don't want me as your doctor. Like, trust me, you want a doctor who wants to be a doctor. Whoever you're working with, you want them to be there because they want to be there, not because someone made them take this decision. And it's something that's really doing what you love is really underrated. And it's like you're seen as if you're this kind of flower child. But it's so important, because then you make the extra effort and you take the extra steps to do it the best that you can. And for not just me, for us, because this is a community effort, to be able to do this for someone, it's so important. And why OCAD? It's because of you, Dori. Your efforts, it's you laugh, but I know that what you are doing at OCAD with the team of people who are there, it's definitely going to change the face of Canadian art and design. And as someone who has been through 2 post-secondary level education within the arts, it's extremely Eurocentric. And I've had critiques that were just painful. And if I didn't have my dad's encouragement and his voice in my head, it would have been completely, life altering for me. And it was just because they weren't accustomed to the cultures that I was talking about and what I was trying to do. Because I always, even though I was studying design, I found I would always do painting. And I remember my painting teacher telling me that my culture places too much of an emphasis in my work. Now, art is culture. No, this is me, like, how many years later? She literally said that. And because I was working with textile techniques in painting. Because to me, as a painter, I see the world as a painter. So even textile design is also a type of painting. It's just a different substrate and different, pigments. And so, at the time I didn't, have the vocabulary to realize, or the experience to realize that she just didn't know how to teach me, because she didn't know what I was talking about. And that was just her reaction to her lack of knowledge on what I was doing. And so there's situations like that you come across as a Black student or student of color within the education system, especially in fine art. that it's also something that you thought about at
Yeah.
OCAD by
Yeah.
hiring, 5
Yeah,
professors, right? So it's a holistic approach that you're taking, and I really admire that, and I can
Thank you.
admire your strength
Thank
and the
you.
effort, and I wanted to contribute to that by making it for a student at OCAD.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the community love. Like I was like, I always tell my boss, right? That's like, if you love the community for real, like the community will love you back. And so thank you for that.
I just have to give a quick shout out to the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Yeah.
Been completely amazing and very supportive. I went to them with a completely crazy idea of actually, because I was doing the mural and I thought about cutting out the wall, and we would auction off the mural that's currently on the wall. But unfortunately, it was a supporting wall, so we couldn't do that. So the next I mean, they're planning on maybe they could have done it anyway, right? So we were kind of trying to figure out what would the next best thing be, and the prints were the next best thing. So here we are.
Thank you. Yeah. So rapid question. We'll start with you, Duane. What is the one practice that youth in design and art should cultivate now in order to be able to better sustain themselves and their community through their creativity?
So I take this experience from my martial arts background and basketball a bit too, and I think consistency, just showing up every day, practicing your craft, whatever that might be. But then this also, you also have to play this weird game now of constantly promoting that you do a certain thing too, because that's the part that we often forget. You can be the dopest at whatever in your studio and nobody knows. So as much as I hate to say this, you got to use Instagram or whatever other means you can to get your work out and consistently work, consistently post, consistently share. Just be consistent.
Good advice. Tafui, what's the one thing that art and design Black youth can do now in order to sustain themselves and the community?
I agree with what he was saying. It's so important to constantly have your voice out there. I mean, if you're going to be on TikTok, you can just talk about your work anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So social media definitely is a really good tool. And also, if it's hard for you to do it on your own, you can get a bunch of your friends and you can all work together and you can build each other, because that's one thing that I also learned too from the maker community and the design community. It's how supportive they are of each other, and people are sharing sources and like we'll piggyback and we'll print textiles together if it costs less. And there's things like that you can do to support each other, even though you might not have a lot of funds, but working together and also sharing, someone else's work alongside with your work by helping to promote them too is also a very good way of sustaining someone else while you're trying to sustain your own career.
Okay, so thank you very much. So enough listening to me, at least ask the questions. Let's check and see what the audience, so please, audience, please post any questions that you have to the chat, and then we'll kind of answer. So early on in the conversation, Pearl posted a question that the ability to negotiate your rate starts with you assigning value to yourself and your skills and your creativity, especially when you're told and that artists are put at the bottom. So how do you overcome that, especially if you don't have like when you're more creative minded and less business minded?
I'll go first. So okay. I think it's one of those things that you have to work on consistently. I don't know if I've fully overcome that at this point, but I think the more you demonstrate that you have talent, and you don't necessarily have to wait for likes on Instagram either. Like, if you're pleased with the work that you're doing consistently, and you have, like we said before, you've been paid to do that thing in the past, then put your foot down and be okay with people walking away. You have to not be afraid of people walking away. I think that's the biggest thing right there. Sometimes they'll just find somebody cheaper, and you have to be okay with that. It's not always easy to say when you don't. Maybe you're in a more desperate financial situation, and in that case, maybe you figure it out. But I think being willing to let them walk away, and the more you do it, the better you get at it.
I think that's really good, and that's where having your passive income really helps, because then you have money coming in somewhere else that you are not stuck with that really low rate, because it will happen. And yes, I completely agree with you, Duane, that you have to be okay with them walking in. So for sure. And I also think bill early. If you bill early and you negotiate the price at the beginning, like I found, at times I would ask all the other questions except for how much the money might be. That would be my first meeting, and then I would go out and do research and then realize, oh, you want X and Y, but you need ABC. So then you can say, I know you said you want logos for your website, a logo for your website, but you don't just need a logo for your website. You also need content. So if you're a good writer, or if you have a friend who's a writer, you can get them. So you can look at other areas where they're also lacking, and then you can say, I can do this, but it may not have the effect that you desire, because you need to have all of these things working at the same time in order for it to work effectively. And that's when you add your $2,000 to the
So we have another question in terms of like, is there a secret sauce, a special thing that can help someone stand out with their art or design? What's the secret sauce to standing out with your art and design?
You know what? I was kind of laughing at that horrible advice that teacher gave Tafui about the culture, because one thing that I get a lot is people asking. They'll say, "I want to do something creative. I want to be an artist, or I want to be a designer full time, whatever. Or I just don't know what. I just don't know what I want to do." And the secret sauce is just within you. Like, it literally is like your culture, your life experience, like that thing that is completely unique, that you end up thinking is unique, and it turns out like a million people say, hey, I experienced that exact same thing, and you can build connections that way. So yeah, the secret sauce is, to me anyway, not being afraid to dig into those weird corners of your brain and make things that seem like they don't make sense.
So I have a question. What more can we do as individuals, or even for me, thinking of, OCAD as an institution, to help designers and artists at any stage of their career know their worth and get others to pay them that worth? Like, what can we be doing to help besides this talk?
Are you going, or should I go?
You can go.
Well, people need to also, young designers need to also remember that design isn't just about something being beautiful. It's also its function, and it's a problem-solving tool first. So, for example, I've applied some design principles with my work So my work is primarily black and white, very graphic, bold patterns. But it also is art for people who are colorblind.
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
And 50% of my patrons are men. So which it's also associated with colorblindness. So it's all of those things I gathered with the data. Some of the things were just through meeting people. I met one guy and he said, he was colorblind. This is even before I started my business, and we were talking about what the colors that he can and can't see, and I was completely blown away by it, and it was something that stuck in my mind, and it's also something I thought about when I was doing my work. And it's so if 50% of your patrons are going to be are male, and this is also a problem that that is being solved in a very subtle way. But then there's other things that are out there now, like their current products and like soap dispensers in the bathroom that work with light, with reflecting from your skin, and people with darker skin, the light absorbs.
Show up.
Right.
Yeah.
So with the soap dispenser, it wasn't working for a lot of people with darker skin. And it's simple problems that currently exist that we can find as designers and say, yes, the soap dispenser is beautiful and it works 60% of the time. I'm going to make sure it works 100% of or 90% of the time. So you can find problems there, and you have access to the facilities at your university. I would use them as much as I possibly can, because it's a great resource and a great area to take advantage of before you leave. So for sure, I would look at what problems exist now that you can help to alleviate.
Great. So the last question, because we're almost coming out of time, is for Duane. So just speaking of negotiating rates, how have you dealt with pricing a client that's just starting out or has a new idea? I mean, you talked a little bit about this in terms of like your barter system, but can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, I used to have this system of assigning points to different values, like values for a job. I don't do it anymore, but I think I might go back to it. But you'd say, is this going to be fun? And that might get a certain amount of points. How much is it going to pay? And that might get a certain amount of points. Or how much is this going to get? Maybe you can tell they have a great idea that is going to blow up in 6 months, but they don't have the money now, but you can see the vision. So in those situations, it really comes down to how much I believe in the idea. If I believe in the idea, then I might cut them a deal, or I might do it for free if I feel like I can negotiate some kind of relationship further in the future that's going to help propel RBC forward or something like that. But it really, if it's something that I'm like, I don't really believe in this idea, I don't, then I would just have to let it go.
So Duane and Tafui, thank you so much. Can you believe it's been an entire hour? I don't believe it's been an entire hour.
Wow.
Thank you.
My brain is working so early.
So thank you for the generosity of your time, and more importantly, thank you for the generosity of sharing your wisdom. So this has been the RBC Black Diamond Ball Workshops Connect. This has been the Black Designers Connect, and as you saw, lots of wisdom being dropped in terms of how to make sure that you understand your worth, and more importantly, get paid your worth, and paid not just in terms of like money and dollars, although that's important to sustain yourself, but also in terms of connection and community and respect and love and all those things that are really important to making us whole, especially as members of the Black community. So would like to thank the sponsors. So thank you, RBC. Thank you, Puma. I think is there a prize happening? Is there maybe a prize happening? Check more details in terms of if there's a prize happening. And again, look forward to connecting. Please view more of the workshops connects. As you can tell that they are full of Black beauty, Black joy, Black wisdom, but real, very practical advice in terms of how you can level up in your career. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Tafui. Thank you, Duane. Thank you to the Art Experiencia team. And thank you all for joining us this morning. And Tafui, get to have a nap today for getting up so early to join us in Vancouver. So all of you, be well, be safe, and know that you are loved. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.